What's up, you guys? Welcome. You know that I cover the global elite books, lecturing directly from their writings so that you out there who don't have the time to read these gigantic, boring tomes, I do your homework for you. I'm the guy that you pay to do your homework for you. And even though we've lectured through about 60 of these, I haven't actually done a top 10 books that really hammer this issue home. What are the top 10 books that prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that the global elite do have a continuity of agenda, a plan for at least 100 years or more, going back to the people in the 1920s and 30s at the Royal Society and so forth? Well, I'm going to tell you today the top 10 books, give you a little summary of those texts and where you can find the full-on lectures to the entirety of those books. They're in no specific order because, of course, they're all really important. But one thing I would say is that before we get to the top 10, there's an honorable mention that I would have to give to Plato's Republic. If you don't know, Plato's Republic really describes the ideal form of government that would lead to technocracy, or the idea that techne, that we could have a purely rational, purely machine-like form of government for human society. And while this might sound plausible, it really doesn't match with human nature. And so I picked out of the 60 or so that we've lectured through, the top 10 that I think are the most illustrative, the clearest to make this point. And again, they're in no specific order. First is the book by Jacques Attali. He's known as the Kissinger of France. Yes, this is the Kissinger of France. Don't ask him for a bagel. You will get a sword in your mouth instead. Don't ask him for a bagel. You're going to get a sword in your mouth, according to Henry Kissinger. Jacques Attali's book, Brief History of the Future. This was written in 2006 and really describes a technocratic, supposedly a utopia based around transhumanism. This is his own terminology that he uses. He says that nanotech and such will lead us to having an interlinked global mind. He calls this global mind a form of the golem. And he says, not Gollum, not my precious Gollum, but the golem from medieval lore. He says that transhumanists are the vanguard of the New World Order, and through the organization of society into an international order, the future will be such that an AI centralized technocratic government using a kind of Borg hive mind model will be able to create the perfect kind of global government in the year 2040 to 2050. So here you have the Kissinger of France literally telling us that that is indeed what is planned. Another one is the book that is approved by the Rand Corporation, and it's Alex Abea's book, Soldiers of Reason. And he was granted an inside access to write an official history of the Rand Corporation about the rise of the American empire and the rise of the technocratic ideas that underlie the Rand Corporation in the entirety of basically the second half of the 20th century, and how they were the masters of the Cold War. They were the masters of transitioning America away from a industry-based society to a servant-based society, basically. They really engineered the whole idea of Cold War, mutual assured destruction, all of the fear, all the panic, which transitioned to the war on terror, which is also something that comes out of the Rand Corporation. Another important text that is often overlooked is the official biography of the Rockefellers by Collier and Horowitz. And this is such an amazing, fascinating text that goes into the history of the creation of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, CFR created back in 1921, the role of J.P. Morgan, Woodrow Wilson, and others in being influenced by the American dynasty known as the Rockefellers. Gets into the history of things like the CIA, foreign operations, and how David Rockefeller had a huge role in a lot of those calling the shots, basically, right? The shot caller in all those operations. And that really it amounts to a banker style or a corporate style global government interested in mass depop. And there's very relevant chapters on the history and rise of feminism as something supported by Abby Rockefeller. There's relevant chapters on the creation of the ecumenist movement as a model for a global religion. Ultimately, that would all be serving as a tool for this international single technocratic order. It's probably probably if I had to pick one most important text out of all these, it would be Dr. Carroll Quigley's Tragedy and Hope, which it's about 1,300 pages. And as you know, we lectured through the entirety of this book about 5 years ago, and it's proven to be one of the more popular things that we've done. That really kicked off the entire Lectures on the Global Elite series. And if you haven't watched that series, I recommend going and watching it, because it's really just an entire history from the perspective of the Anglo-American establishment, or the Atlanticist elite power structure, on how they were in many ways involved in the two world wars of the 20th century, and that the plan of those world wars was to actually nullify and drain the two potential rivals to the Atlanticist power bloc, that is the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russia. And that was the real meaning of the two world wars and the Cold War, which led us up to this idea of a synthesis towards a new world order, which is based around the ideas of the third way, or the idea of the synthesis between the dialectical oppositions of the Cold War, monopolistic capitalism, and Soviet bloc communism, meeting in the middle to produce what nowadays is called the Great Reset. Now, Dr. Quigley, who, by the way, was Bill Clinton's mentor, how dare you read Dr. Quigley's books? How dare you? Now, there's another book that Quigley wrote that's just as important and arguably a little more accessible and readable, and that's his book, Anglo-American Establishment, which goes into the history of the roundtable groups, the Royal Society, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, Chatham House, Pratt House, and the history of those steering committee groups, roundtable groups, which would form the basis of this inner group of the Western elite that basically are setting up what we call the international order, or the technocratic order. Equally as important as Dr. Quigley's writings are another one of the key thinkers for the internationalist, and that is Zbigniew Brzezinski's book, Between Two Ages, where he predicts the coming of the technocratic age, America's role in the technocratic era. And Brzezinski's book was written back in the early 1970s and got into a lot of things that still to this day seem to be, quote, sci-fi, right? He predicted genetic modification and mutation on a mass level, nanotech. He predicts Skynet-style surveillance and control systems. He talks about the rise of ecumenism and a kind of global religion. He talks about the GEO engineering things that could be done. He talks about how ultimately the technocratic era is the future that will come about on the basis of the emerging power out of the Cold Wars, and showing the continuity of agenda between him and today's elites, such as Klaus Schwab, who we've covered for the last several years. We were doing videos on Davos 5-6 years ago pointing this out. And now we have, of course, Klaus's fairly recent book from 2018, Shaping the Future of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, where he explicitly tells us that yes, it will be an international global order. Yes, it will be based around centralized AI tech. Yes, it will be based around Skynet. Yes, it will be based around the idea of nanotech inside of you, the rewriting of human RNA, DNA, and so forth, all listed clear as day in Klaus's text. Another one of the key texts that is overlooked is, this is about number 9 here. UNESCO, its purpose and philosophy, Julian Huxley's famous text, setting the stage of the mindset, the philosophy of UNESCO. What is UNESCO? Well, it's the United Nations Education and Social Development Organ, or arm, which is tasked with really creating the culture that the UN wants as one of the key organs of global power for the internationalists. And the amazing thing about this book is that it's really honest in its descriptions of the future being a genetic-based tiered structure society. So all the talk that we've heard over the years of equality and equalitarianism is actually undermined and shown to be something that they never had in mind when we look at this 1946 text, which describes basically an international technocratic order based around biometrics. And so they just took eugenics and renamed it as biometrics to make it sound more plausible, more humanitarian. But it's the exact same idea of Malthusianism that all the other global elite texts share. And so again, this is the official philosophy of the system. Both of these books kind of go together, and that's The Open Conspiracy and the New World Order by H.G. Wells. And he was the liberal side of this international order, who was portraying himself as a man of the people and all this kind of, but he was very much an anti-human, because he thought that, again, depop was something absolutely necessary. He thought that the family is an oppressive structure that we need to get rid of. And so both of those books, again, from the same, these are all people from the same power structure writing all of the same things in their texts. So it should be really obvious, really easy, very simple to go and verify and see, are these things the case? Were these the people that were in power in the 1920s and 30s? Were they shaping the world at the time? Are they still shaping the world today? And do they call for all of the same technocratic international plans? Well, absolutely they do. It's in all of their books.